Let's get back to the phones. We go to Detroit. This is Tom. Great to have you, Tom. Glad you waited. I appreciate your patience. How are you?
Doing well. Rush, how about you?
Fine. Thanks much.
Good. I've got a concern about what the sheriff down in Florida is asking for as far as, I guess, lack of a better term, combing the web and bringing in people because of comments they posted or may have posted, thought that they posted. I think what eventually is going to happen is what happened with the FISA court. There's going to be an abuse there, and it's a serious abuse. I'd like your comment on that.
That's a good point. Well, let's look at the FISA, since you bring that up. We now have a dossier that, to this day, remains unverified and uncorroborated. And it was used to secure a warrant to spy on Carter Page, and its primary purpose was to get Donald Trump. And the judge at the FISA court may have been misled. We don't know. We don't know yet whether the judge was told it was paid for by Hillary Clinton or not. So your analogy here is, and by the way, this has made me wonder if this is a one-off or if this is the way this process is happening routinely, that the FISA court has become such a rubber stamp that you can take anything up to them and the judge will say, go ahead, here's your warrant. I mean, they can get a warrant on an uncorroborated, unverified piece of garbage like this thing is. Then what other warrants have been granted that may not have any real backup? So your point is that is just as dangerous as a sheriff in Florida being able to go pull a kid out of his house and put him in an institution simply because what the kid's written and posted on YouTube.
Or not even what he may have written, but what other people have written about him. Like the bullying. You get 3-4 kids that don't like Johnny, and so they pick on Johnny and they fabricate stories that gets them in trouble. Well,
we know that happens too. A lot of stuff's made up on it. Speaking of which, I can attest to that personally.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is crossing a bridge, and then maybe tearing down the bridge afterwards. I know I can, but see, I can understand the sheriff's frustration. You know how many people are dumping on law enforcement here?
Oh, sure.
I mean, The cops are being shot already because of Black Lives Matter. They're out there being shot. And by the way, speaking of that, may I make an observation? This is another thing. Since when did Democrats become big supporters and proponents of law enforcement? Like Adam Shifty, Pencil Neck Schiff, and all these other people out there say, you can't criticize the FBI. That's un-American. You can't criticize law enforcement. You can't. What have you people made your bones on? You've been criticizing the cops. You've been joining Black Lives Matter. You criticize the cops in Baltimore. You criticize the cops in Ferguson. You people on the Democrat side have made a career now out of trying to convince people the cops everywhere are corrupt. All it takes is Black Lives Matter to come along and claim that cops are innocently shooting innocent blacks, murdering them or putting them in prison or whatever. And there it's perfectly fine to criticize law enforcement. So these law enforcement guys, I can imagine what it's like to be them. How about this? How about you are being threatened? You are living at home. You're a woman. You've got a stalker. You've got somebody that comes up to your window and stares every night, follows you around, never touches you. You call the cops. You're scared to death. You get a restraining order. That's as much as you can get. The stalker violates the restraining order, but it's tough to catch the guy in the act. The point is, law enforcement will tell that woman, I'm sorry, we can't do anything until he attacks. He hasn't broken the law yet. He hasn't committed a crime. But meanwhile, the woman is scared to death. Or it could be a guy being stalked by who knows who. And then the crime eventually happens, and the woman is either maimed, injured, or killed. And people call law enforcement, why didn't you do something? And they're doing it now. This shooter was apparently widely known. He had warned everybody he was going to do this. He threatened to do it. He put it on YouTube. Another YouTuber saw it, informed the FBI. Then this shooting event happens yesterday. And can you imagine the number of people talking to the sheriff or the cops down there? Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you do that? The cops are getting frustrated. If you, let's put it in human terms, if you're in law enforcement or anywhere and you had enough data that you trusted, that made you genuinely scared something like this could happen, and you couldn't do anything to stop it, and then it happens. Can you imagine the frustration? And then when you've got members of the community calling you and yelling or plaintively asking, why didn't you stop the guy? We can't. So a part of me understands the frustration of the sheriff and law enforcement. But then you come along here, Tom, and your point is exactly right. With the availability of social media and the ability to lie, it is a dangerous situation, which is why I revert back to one of my original points at the top of the program. There is a solution out there, but we're never going to get to it if we can't properly identify the problem, number one. And the official language of liberalism, political correctness, does not allow us to honestly address these things language-wise. Without the experimentation, innovation in various states, local communities, we're never going to get there.